Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 33rd part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 33, UA Sports Festival Conclusion. Izumi sat in the waiting room, waiting to be called for the match against both Momo and Vine, Durandal sitting beside her, marinating in her own worry. How were they supposed to beat them? Momo had both a nanocore and her ability to create almost anything and was a skilled fighter. There was no way Izumi could beat her. And then there was Vine, whose vines could easily grapple Ochako and throw her out of the ring. Being able to technically mimic the ability to fly can't do much if you're grabbed by a bunch of vines. They can't win, it was impossible. Izumi, Ochako said, resting a hand on the girl's shoulder and giving her a comforting squeeze, a worried look on her face. Are you okay? I'm fine, just nervous, Izumi replied, shaking slightly. How are we going to win our next match? This is the first time UA has done something like this. 2 versus 2 matches are unheard of. We can't win this. It's impossible. Izumi. You're thinking about this all wrong, Ochako said. You're still thinking this is like the 1 vs 1 matches. But it isn't, it's 2 vs 2. You're not limited to just fighting Momo, and I'm not limited to fighting mine. Izumi looked at her friend for a few moments as she processed this new information. How had she not seen this before? She was so caught up in her worry about having to fight Momo that she had completely forgotten that she didn't have to. Thanks, Ochako, Izumi beamed before she stood up and started pacing around the room, muttering to herself as she came up with a plan. Ochako meanwhile just stood back and allowed her friend to plan. Admittedly, she already had an idea of how to beat Momo, just use her quirk on her and throw her out of the ring, but she was relying on Izumi to formulate it into a plan. She wasn't exactly great when it came to fighting, wanting to be a rescue hero and all that. So combat for her basically boiled down to slap my opponent's face and use my quirk to throw them around. Which wasn't the best strategy to use during a fight. But she had to get stronger, for those she cared about. She watched her parents die, murdered right in front of her by Dash, and was unable to do anything when 13 was killed. She had lost too many people in her life, and now she wanted to protect those close to her. Izumi especially. After a good minute or so, Izumi stopped muttering and turned towards Ochako. Okay, I have a plan. That's great. Ochako said with a smile. Let's hear it. Izumi suddenly looked sheepish and averted her gaze. You're not going to like it. Meanwhile, in the other waiting room, Momo and her partner Vine, Ibara Shiozaki, were also planning. Well, our original matchups favored us, so we should focus on our original opponents, Momo said as she performed some stretches. As you wish, Ibara said, but we should not allow overconfidence to shroud our judgment. No doubt our opponents know this as well and wish to switch opponents. Well, let's not give them the chance to do that, shall we? Momo said, your vines, how strong are they? I noticed that they were very resistant to acid. Indeed they are, Ibara replied. My vines are immune to acid, and are highly resilient to fire. But this resilience comes at a cost. They're not as strong as they used to be. Used to be? Momo inquired. My quirk, mutated, Ibara said with a frown. Let us leave it at that, shall we? Momo nodded, realizing she was approaching a touchy subject. After all, Ibara wasn't the only person she knew whose quirk mutated. Would Yusako, Galastram, Creati, and Vine please report to the arena? A voice said over the intercom. Well, looks like it's time, Momo said as she walked over to the door, Ibara following behind. Will you be alright out there? As long as President Mike doesn't make another blasphemous comment about me, I should be fine, Ibara replied. Momo nodded as they made their way into the tunnel and waited to be called out onto the field. Out first, they're 2 of the hero course's strongest first-year ladies. Please welcome back Vine and Creati. President Mike announced as the 2 girls walked out onto the field. Well, whilst I think that this introduction is better than the last ones, Ibara said as they walked towards the ring, I would not say that I am among the strongest in the course. Shoto is by far stronger than I am. And their opponents. They're the unstoppable green tea duo. It's Yusako and Galastram. Present Mike continued as Izumi and Achiko walked out, both blushing like crazy and trying not to look at the other. God damn it, Mike! Momo thought with a sigh as they walked up onto the concrete ring. Why did you give them a ship name? She thought. Admittedly, it was a good ship name. Achiko's name had T in it when translated to Chinese, that is, as well as Imperial and Child, and Izumi had green hair and eyes. Green tea made for a rather nice ship name, and now she was shipping them as well. Fuck. Why did those two have to be so adorable together? They were almost illegally cute. If only she had more confidence to pursue them, they were just so adorable. But polycules are rare and are only really found in romance novels and fanfics. Plus, most people who were interested in her were turned away due to her father. Having an overprotective dad does have its downsides, especially when said dad has nicknames such as the Yayarozu Dragon. It appears Mike has made our opponents uncomfortable again, Ibara said with a frown. So it would seem, Momo said, sounding annoyed. She then looked up towards Izumi and Achiko, noticing that Izumi was standing in front of her, whilst Achiko stood in front of Ibara. Are you two alright? She asked, but silently wondered what they were doing. They should have known that their original matchups didn't favor them. Yeah, we're fine, Izumi blurted out. Midnight let out a loud, audible sigh. I swear he did that deliberately, she thought. The entire facility knew about her bet that the 1A Snuggle Squad would get together, even bet on the order of when they would join. They were all just so adorable together. Ah, the joys of youth. Sadly, something as embarrassing as publicly shipping them like this may prove detrimental to them. Seriously, she knew she was hot, but seriously, she could do with fewer people shipping her with heroes such as All Might. She was bi, yes, but All Might was a bit too big for her. She preferred more reasonably sized hunks, like Gurren. That man was just so hot, sexy, and fucking taken. Goddammit, Yoko, you lucky, sexy hot bitch. Anyway, broken crush aside, she was going to need more ice cream after this. She was going to have words with Mike about this, and maybe Eraser as well, since Mike wouldn't be able to pull a meaningful name like green tea out of his arse like this. He didn't even know Chinese. Are both teams ready? Midnight asked, having given them plenty of time to recover from Mick's arguably bad introductions. All four students nodded. The blushes on Izumi and Achiko's were now gone, mostly. But they looked more focused now. Good, she didn't want her students losing due to commentator sabotage. Alright then. You all know the rules by now. Midnight said, but we have a few additional ones due to the unique nature of this round. No hitting your partners. Accidents may happen and friendly fire is a risk we heroes have to be aware of, but any deliberate attempt to attack your teammate will result in immediate disqualification for your team. Also, you only need one member of your team still able to fight to win. If one of you is incapacitated, but the other is still capable of fighting, you still have a chance to make it to the final, she said before she raised her whip. With that out of the way, let the semifinals 2-on-2 special begin. Momo immediately set about creating a staff from her arm, but the creation process was interrupted by a sudden blast of air hitting her arm, her nanomachines hardening in response to the hit but also putting a stop to her creation, leaving her with only a short metal rod that was useless. An unfortunate aspect of her nanocore was that, like most cybernetics, it interfered with her quirk. When the nanomachines hardened, they prevented her from creating things from the hardened area. Another blast of air hit her, forcing her to put her arms in front of her for protection. She then looked forwards and realized that it was Izumi sending those air blasts towards her by flicking her fingers at her. They weren't strong enough to force her out of the ring, but they were preventing her from using her quirk and supporting her teammate. Hopefully, Ibara had Achiko under control. A hard slap to the face brought Momo out of her musing. Where the hell did that come from? And would you look at that? Present Mike said, Galastram has just used Vine as a springboard to hit Creati. Momo's eyes bulged. Achiko had just slapped her? Crap, that means that, yep, her gravity was gone and she was now floating. Moments later she found herself thrown out of the ring, catching a glimpse of a smirk on Achiko's face as she flew past. But the gravity girl's smirk was short-lived as one of Ibara's vines grabbed her and threw her out as well. Unfortunately, she was not fast enough to grab Momo before she hit the ground.
Galastram and Creati are out of bounds, Midnight announced.
Release, Achiko said, pressing her fingers together and deactivating her quirk. Gravity returned to the two people who were affected by it.
Momo cursed.
They did know their Izumi matchups were bad and had clearly planned out how they were going to beat them. She was so focused on Izumi that she wasn't paying attention to Achiko, and she had paid the price for it. At first, she thought that Ibara could handle Izumi by herself. Her vines could easily restrain Izumi, just like she had done to Mina and Koji. But that was reliant on Izumi not having a ranged attack, which as she had just shown, she does. Ibara had turned with her back towards Izumi, her vines planted into the ground and shielding her. But they could not protect her from Izumi's air blasts. Izumi flicked her fingers 4 times at Ibara, each one ripping through her vines and sending her staggering forwards towards the edge of the ring. She then charged forwards, shooting off another air blast as she rushed towards Ibara, destroying another bunch of vines that she was going to use to help anchor her in place. With the vine-haired girl destabilized, Izumi had no trouble in kicking her out of the ring, using just enough force to force her out but not enough to send her flying out and risk causing her too much harm.
Vine is out of bounds. Midnight said the winners are Galastram and Yusako,
she said as the crowd started to loudly cheer.
Momo sighed as she lay back on the ground.
That was disappointing, to say the least. She allowed herself to become overconfident, resulting in them losing a battle they should have been able to win.
You okay?
Achiko asked beside her, having stood up and walked over to her.
Momo hummed in reply as she sat up. Yeah, I'm okay. I didn't expect to lose so easily.
Yeah, that was kind of unexpected, Achiko said as she helped Momo up. I thought you would have at least gotten a few attacks off on us.
You did make a cannon last round.
I did, didn't I? Momo said, but that time I had time to make them.
You two didn't give me the opportunity or time to do so.
Plus with Izumi constantly attacking me I couldn't create anything, she said as she looked over towards Ibara, seeing that she was being helped up by Izumi. Come on, let's get you to recovery girl, Achiko said as the two walked towards the tunnel. I should be fine, Momo said as they walked, but a quick once-over shouldn't hurt.
It's Ibara who might need more care from her.
Achiko nodded before she made her way to the infirmary alongside the others, Durandal joining up with them. Once there they all got checked out by recovery girl.
Both Achiko and Momo had some bruising but nothing serious.
Ibara had a few more as well as a damaged rib, which Izumi profoundly apologized for, but nothing too serious. And Izumi had strained her fingers a bit, but like the others, it wasn't anything too bad. There was a 20-minute rest period between the semifinals and the finals, allowing the finalists time to rest and be at their best. Achiko had hoped to have spent the time with Izumi, but for some reason, she bolted from the infirmary right after she was healed along with Durandal, but she didn't know where. She started checking the more obvious locations first, the various waiting rooms that were available to them, but Izumi wasn't in any of them. She then checked the stands, no sign of her there, she wasn't even with her father.
With 5 minutes left before the finals, she thought she would never find Izumi.
But, just as she was about to give up, she spotted Durandal,
laying down outside of a women's restroom. Durandal?
I was wondering when you were going to show up, Durandal said, raising her head towards Achiko, although I probably should have called you.
Called me?
Achiko asked as she approached before looking towards the door he was resting by. Where's Izumi? She's in there, crying I believe, Durandal replied.
Crying?
Achiko said, sounding surprised. Why is she crying? What happened?
I don't know, Durandal replied. She just said she needed to go to the bathroom, rushed here, told me to wait outside and went inside.
She's been in there for the past 15 minutes.
Achiko looked at Durandal before looking back at the door. What was wrong with Izumi?
She was fine earlier, so what happened to her? Feeling concerned for her friend, she pushed the door open and entered the room. A row of toilet cubicles was laid along one of the walls, and only one of them was locked. She could also hear crying, low, quiet crying, coming from the one occupied cubicle.
Izumi?
Achiko said softly as she walked over to the cubicle. Are you okay? She stood outside the cubicle for a bit, waiting for Izumi's reply, but none came. Izumi, please, talk to me, what's wrong? She asked, worried in her voice. The finals start in 4 minutes and I'm worried about you. There was silence from the cubicle, with the occasional hiccup, but, after a few moments, Izumi spoke. I don't want to hurt you. What? Achiko said, sounding confused. Why? What's wrong? If you're worried about controlling your quirk's output, I'm sure you'll be fine. You've displayed great control over it during the festival. Izumi didn't reply, leaving them in silence. Izumi, please, talk to me. What's wrong? Achiko asked, her concern for her friend growing. Is it about the fight? Are you struggling to come up with a plan to win? No. Izumi suddenly shouted. Achiko took a step back in shock. No, that's not it. I've already come up with a strategy to win. But, I don't want to use it, she said, crying slightly. I think I'm going to just forfeit the next match. What? Achiko shouted. No, don't say that. This is the finals, you can't just forfeit them. We've both worked hard to get here. You can't just throw it away like that. She said before she took a few deep breaths to help calm herself down. The last thing she wanted to be doing was to be shouting at the poor girl. Look, if there's a problem, please, tell me about it. I'm your friend Izumi, and I'm worried about you. There was a brief silence before Izumi spoke again. It's impossible for me to win if you use your quirk on yourself. I won't be able to throw you out of the ring, and you'll be able to fly around the ring and avoid me, she said. The only way I can win is to hit you with an air blast and send you flying out of the ring before you can use your quirk, she said, but doing so would be too much like the time you was punched by Nomu. Achiko finished, realizing why Izumi was so upset about this. That Nomu almost killed her when it punched her, and it was apparent that she was worried about doing the same. Izumi, you have nothing to worry about. I survived that hit. But we don't know how. Izumi cried. We don't know how you managed to survive that hit unharmed. I don't want to risk hurting you. I like you, Achiko, I really like you, and I don't want to hurt you. Achiko frowned, realizing the full extent of the problem. Izumi wasn't just worried about hurting her but was also worried that she'd damage their relationship if she did. She had made a promise to catch the girl if she fell, and now that promise was biting her in the arse. This is what happens when the world treats a girl like shit for most of her life, gives her a friend who promises to protect her, and then puts her into a situation where she has to fight the same person who said they would protect them, she thought, not at all happy with this turn of events. Izumi, I know you're worried about hurting me too much, but I'll be fine, Achiko said softly, placing her hand against the door. Remember your plan, the one you thought I wouldn't like because I would have to sacrifice myself to get Momo out of the ring? I still went through with it, because I trusted you to finish the fight. I trust you, Izumi, I trust you enough to know that you won't go overboard during our fight. I know you want to win this, I do too. But I don't want my victory to be handed to me. I want to work for it, to give it my all to try and win it. It would feel hollow if I won by my opponent forfeiting. You already know how that felt during your match against Minoru. Please, don't do the same to me. She hated herself for having to use that argument, but what choice did she have? She didn't want to be presented with the win on a silver platter, and she doubted Izumi wanted it either. She wanted to give it her all and fight for her win, and she wanted Izumi to do the same, to give it her all to win. Even if it meant making the match a quick one. There was a long silence that fell upon the room. Achiko was worried that she had taken it a bit too far, that she had made things worse instead of better. Her fears were soon proven wrong as she heard the sound of the cubicle's latch being unlocked. Taking a step back as the door opened, she saw Izumi in a sorry state. The area around her eyes was red and wet, her uniform looked soaked, and she was slumped forwards. Izumi? Achiko said, sounding worried. I'm sorry. Izumi cried as she shot forwards and hugged Achiko tightly, tears gushing out of her eyes. Achiko smiled softly as she returned the hug. It's okay, Izumi. It's okay. They stood there for a while, holding each other whilst Izumi quietly cried. Achiko gently rubbed Izumi's back, comforting her. Izumi, promise me, Achiko said softly, promise me that you'll give it your all during our next match. Please. And in turn, I'll promise you that I will be fine, no matter how hard you hit me. Izumi hiccuped before she nodded. I promise, she said shakily. She didn't want to hurt Achiko, but forfeiting the match would hurt her just as much as blasting her out of the ring with an air blast. So either way, Achiko was going to get hurt by her. She just decided to go with the option that would hopefully hurt the least. Achiko pulled out of the hug and smiled. Thank you, she said. Remember, this is our first attempt at getting noticed by the pros. So go out there and show the world that you are here. Izumi nodded, wiping the tears from her eyes with the ends of her sleeves. Achiko was right, she couldn't just give up after making it this far. Giving up now would harm both of them. Plus, All Might had told her to use this as an opportunity to show the world that she was here, and she did not want to disappoint him. She had to give it her all. I'm going to need a new shirt, Izumi said with a sniffle, noting how wet her uniform had gotten from all the crying she had done. I'm sure Momo will be more than happy to make you a new one, Achiko said, but we better hurry. We've only got about a minute or so before we're supposed to be at the arena. Izumi nodded before the two ran out of the room, only for Achiko to run headfirst into something large and soft. Ah! The voice of Momo gasped. I'm sorry, Achiko, I didn't see you there. Achiko, who was currently as red as the sun, quickly removed her head from between Momo's pillows. It's okay. We shouldn't have run out like that, she said. Fuck. I must really be off my game today if I couldn't sense Momo being nearby. Well, at least you hit something soft, Durandal remarked. After all, large boobs made for great cushions. I called her here, by the way, just in case. Thank you, Durandal, Izumi said, a slight blush on her face. Momo, could you please make me a new uniform? My current one's kind of wet. Momo quickly gave Izumi a once-over before she nodded, unzipping her shirt so that she could create the desired clothing. Izumi accepted the replacement uniform with a smile and quickly rushed back into the restroom to change, coming back outside a few moments later. All right, I'm ready. Let's give it our all out there, Achiko. Achiko nodded just as they were called to the ring. Well, I'll see you out there, Izumi. Remember, give it your all out there. Don't hold back just because it's me. A few minutes outside in the arena, President Mike was rallying the crowd in preparation for the finals. Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between. It's time for the event you've all been waiting for. The finals for the UA First Year Sports Festival are here. The crowd cheered loudly. This was the last event of the day, and they were all hyped to watch the two remaining students fight it out. First one out. She's been an unstoppable force throughout the entire festival, but can she maintain her momentum? Or will her unstoppable onslaught end here? President Mike said, please welcome back, Yusako. For the last time that day, Izumi walked out onto the field and towards the ring, Durandal waiting at the threshold of the tunnel she just left. This was it. The finals. If someone had told her that she would make it here during her first year at UA, she wouldn't have believed them. But here she was, the finals, one fight away from winning. She was grateful for Achiko talking some sense into her. This was the finals after all, and if she forfeited it, she won't be disappointing just Achiko. All Might, her mother, father, classmates, the teachers, and all those watching would also be disappointed as well. They wanted them to give them a good fight and, well, whilst she couldn't guarantee a good one, forfeiting would only make both of them look bad. Speaking of Achiko, President Mike had just begun her introduction and her opponent. She's shown us all that gravity is a cruel mistress. Will she soar like a rocket, or fall to earth like a comet? Please welcome back, Galastram. Achiko smiled as she walked out into the arena opposite Izumi. She was ready to give it her all during this match, and she hoped that, after her talk with Izumi, the green-haired girl would do the same. Izumi once more went over the strategy to win this fight as she stepped into the ring. If Achiko was allowed to use her quirk on herself, then her victory would be certified. Izumi had no hope of beating her if she was flying around. The ability to remove something's gravity and have the ability to move that something around was a powerful combination, giving Achiko a sort of pseudo-flight, and she lacked the training to deal with a flying opponent. Sir Night didn't exactly have time or anyone on hand who could teach her how to fight someone who could fly. But to be fair, there were very few quirks out there that allowed their user to fly. So, the only way she could win was to prevent Achiko from using her quirk in the first place. And that meant she had to send her flying out of the ring the moment the match started with a strong air blast. She trusted Achiko to be okay after being hit by such an attack, but, due to that take, Achiko now knew her strategy. She had to be quick. The question is, could she be quick enough to do it? Both of them stood opposite each other in the ring, patiently waiting for the match to start. Are both contestants ready? Midnight asked loudly. Both girls nodded as they took on combat stances. Well, Izumi did anyway. Achiko meanwhile was preparing to use her quirk on herself as quickly as possible. If she could do that, then her victory would be secured. Izumi would be unable to properly throw her out of the ring that way. Well then, Midnight said, licking her lips as she raised her whip, let the final round begin. At the crack of her whip, both continents moved. Izumi quickly raised her right arm towards Achiko, using her left arm to help brace it as one for all flowed throughout her entire body. Achiko meanwhile quickly moved her hands together so that she could negate her own gravity. 3 fingers pressed against her open palm, quickly followed by a 4th. But just as her thumb was about to connect with her hand, Izumi flicked her middle finger, sending a powerful air blast towards her. Achiko felt the air get blasted out of her lungs as she was sent flying back out of the ring and onto her back. Both of them knew this match would be decided in the first few seconds, and both of them reacted quickly. Achiko was just a tad too slow. Izumi stood at the opposite end of the ring, panting heavily and still holding her arm, her middle finger slightly red and clearly broken. She had to strain her quirk to about 20% to send a strong enough air blast to knock Achiko out of the ring. She just hoped that she hadn't overdone it. The entire arena was silent. The crowd watched in shocked silence, surprised by how quickly the final match of the day went. Even present Mike was silent, having collapsed onto the floor with his legs in the air. Eraserhead was just smirking at his friend's disappointment. Mike hated short matches as it meant he couldn't do much commentating, which pleased Eraserhead greatly. And then there was Mirko, grinning like mad in a sea of confused faces. She said she wanted to see Yusako break a few heads out there, and she's gotten exactly that. She was slightly disappointed that the final match was over in a few seconds, but she was very used to that kind of thing already. After all, there were very few people out there who could withstand more than one kick from her. Achiko suddenly raised an arm and gave Izumi a thumbs up. I'm okay. She panted, the same smile she had when she walked onto the ring on her face. Izumi released a breath she didn't even realize she had been holding, her body slumping as she relaxed. Achiko was okay, that was all she cared about right now. Her friend was alright. And with an amazing display of quick reflexes and power, Galastram has been sent flying out of bounds. Midnight said, doing present mixed job. The winner of the UA First Year Sports Festival is the unstoppable hero, Yusako. The crowd started to cheer loudly. The fight might have been short, but it was still an impressive display of power. A few people were even chanting her hero name, but Izumi was drowning them out. She had something more important to focus on. She rushed towards Achiko, jumping out of the ring and landing beside her. You okay? She asked, a worried look on her face. I said I was fine, didn't I? Achiko replied with a smile as she sat up. Izumi gave her a shaky smile before she helped her up, Durandal rushing to her side. She put an arm around her, allowing her to rest against her. Let's get to recovery, girl, she said as the three made their way towards the tunnel, drawing out the thousands of people cheering for them, or not noticing the knowing smirk on Midnight's face. Well, Izumi, you did it. You won your first ever sports festival, Durandal said as they walked towards and into the tunnel. How do you feel? Izumi looked down at her mechanical friend and smiled. I feel surprised. I didn't expect to get here at all. I thought I would have to wait till my 3rd year until I reached the 3rd round. And even then, I would never have expected to win. So to have won my first ever sports festival is overwhelming, she said, tears in her eyes. Achiko smiled. Don't sell yourself short, Izumi. I knew you would do well today. Izumi turned towards Achiko, gazing at her as they walked. A small blush formed on her face. Achiko was so pretty, beautiful, and attractive. Everything Izumi wasn't. She was just plain looking, nothing even remotely attractive about her. Izumi would be lucky if Achiko even liked her. You won't know until you ask, a female voice said comfortingly inside Izumi's head. Probably one of the vestiges since she has heard it before. If anyone asked, she would blame it on adrenaline, which wasn't a great excuse because there wasn't much adrenaline in her in the first place due to the match being so short. But she would blame it on that anyway. Achiko? Izumi said nervously, getting the other girl's attention. She then leaned in and, well, she was aiming to kiss Achiko's cheek, but at the last minute the gravity girl turned towards her, resulting in her kissing Achiko on the lips instead. Izumi shot back in a panic, blushing a deep red as she realized just how badly she'd messed things up. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to kiss you, I just wanted to dash, she muttered before Achiko gently placed a hand against Izumi's head, leaned in, and kissed her gently. Izumi's eyes went as wide as saucers. Why? Why was Achiko kissing her? Shouldn't she be mad at her? She just kissed her out of the blue, on the lips. Even if she didn't mean to and only wanted to kiss her cheek, which, she was now wondering why she even attempted to do that in the first palace. She should be mad at her. Why wasn't she mad? Achiko slowly pulled back from the kiss, a bright smile on her face. She looked happy. Aren't you mad? Izumi asked, tears slowly pooling around her eyes. Why should I be? Achiko replied, still smiling brightly, I love you, Izumi. And just like that, something clicked inside Izumi. A few words that she had been wanting to hear from someone for so long. She had tried so many times to confess her feelings to people or ask them out, but each time she tried it always resulted in either an explosion or slap to the face, followed by being mocked or shouted at by the boy she was talking to, and ending with her getting detention for causing a disturbance. It had gotten so bad that she had completely given up on finding a boyfriend, especially since every boy she asked out reacted negatively to her. And she never asked any girls out of fear of them reacting the same way. So hearing from Achiko that she loved her was shocking. She almost didn't believe it, thinking that she was playing some sick joke on her like a few people had played on her before. But she knew, deep down she knew that Achiko was being honest with her. The girl had shown multiple times that she cared about her, she wouldn't have promised to catch her if she didn't. She had always been honest with how she felt, she had no reason to lie. She was being genuine, she genuinely loved her. Tears started to form around Izumi's eyes, but these weren't sad tears, they were happy tears. I love you too, she said before she shot forwards and kissed Achiko once more. The kiss was sloppy, awkward and tentative, as neither of them had any experience with kissing someone. But, they were both willing to learn how to improve and be better, and both of them were quick learners. Izumi couldn't help but slightly scream internally, but the screaming soon died down as she calmed down and relaxed her body, trying her best to ignore the high-pitched continuous squeak coming from one of the vestiges. Alright, that's enough kissing from you two. Recovery girl said as she broke up the kiss with her cane. You lovebirds can have a celebratory makeout session later when you get back to your dorm. Right now I've got to check you two out for injuries. Follow me please, she said as she walked off. Both Izumi and Achiko blushed heavily as they followed the old heroine, embarrassed that recovery girl of all people had walked in on them having their first kiss. It was embarrassing, yes, but it could have been a lot worse. It could have been Nina or Himiko who had found them. As the two followed recovery girl, they slowly held each other's hand, their fingers intertwined. The sports festival may be over, but there were still challenges ahead of them. And they were going to face them, together. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 34. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.